If you've looked into mice before, you probably know there's a lot to sensor testing. I don't really go into that much detail because my philosophy is simple. I've been playing Quake for over 20 years, so if it works in game for me, it's most likely fine. There are some exceptions, of course. However, optical sensors are so good these days, in a blind test, I don't believe humans can tell the difference. It's pretty much just the tilt slam test that's causing an issue, so I'm just repeating myself in reviews saying that they all perform really well. In this video, I want to go over some sensors and their differences, if any, and while I will continue testing, I probably won't show it in video unless there's an issue. This video will show the tests that I do for each mouse, and if you're wondering which is the best sensor, you could say Razer's 3389, but I doubt you'd be able to tell the difference, or Logitech's Hero sensor, which in my opinion is probably the best because it's so good in wireless mice, which I think is the future, and it essentially gives you the performance of a 3360, with the exception of the tilt slam test, but I'll get to that. So among the top opticals, I don't really mind which it is. I still use the 3310 in the FK2, so as always, because the sensors are so good now, I focus a lot more on the shape. I think the shape is far more important. It's better to get the mouse that suits your hand size, rather than the one with the best sensor, because there really isn't much difference. I use Quake Live because of the raw input, and I'm so familiar with the game, plus there's no clutter. I do a rocket jumping test first. This is just a general test, making sure it works for a lot of quick flicks and movement, and it's more about feel of the shape, even though it's in the sensor section. Because to test if it'll spin out, I just move it as fast as I can like this. It is extremely rare for a sensor to spin out these days, they're too good. And spin out just means it'll lose track and start looking up or down, and usually it spins around, but these days not really. Some do have an issue with the tilt slam though, as I said, like the 3310, which is an old sensor found in most BenQ Zowie mice. So if we tilt the mouse on its side and then slam it down fast, the sensor is forced to track really quickly again, and sometimes it's just too quick for it to keep up. The new sensors don't seem to have this issue. Here's the same test with the new Logitech Hero sensor. And most of the time I can't get it to lose track. However, sometimes it just doesn't move and I'm not sure if it's technique or the sensor just not picking up the movement. And these are extreme movements, I don't think anyone should be playing like this. If you're tilting the mouse like this and actually slamming it down in this way, that's a technique issue and not something that you should really blame on the sensor. Before someone told me about this, I'd never seen it before. In all my years of playing, I'd never caused it to happen. But at the same time, if you are having this issue, I do recommend you correct your technique. Here's the test with the Logitech G102 using the Mercury sensor. Doesn't track sometimes, but I can't get it to spin out. Most of the time, it's fine. Again, really not a problem. And finally, the G Pro Wide with the 3366. No issue at all. The only time I've seen a 3360 sensor fail is when the liftoff distance has been wrong. Anyway, that's 3 different sensors in the same shell from Logitech. And while playing, I can't tell the difference. Let's look at the sniper test. I do pixel by pixel first because the sensor in the Razer Mamba Tournament Edition and the Lenshead Wireless can't do it. This is important in shooters because of the micro adjustments you make. All top opticals can do it easily. Next we have standard tracking movement, so left and right, up and down and diagonals, looking for jitters or skips. There was a skipping issue on the Dream Machine's DM3 Mini, but they fixed that with firmware, so I still test for it, but it's very rare. And again, I can't tell the difference between the top sensors. Some people say they can, but I think it's more likely they're feeling the difference in mouse feet, or the shape, or the weight, or balance, maybe even the cable. There are so many other factors, and I think placebo does play into it. I've tried these tests at all different DPI levels too, and no delay either. A test for acceleration and deceleration, and it's not an exact test, but it's good enough. Again, most top opticals won't have an issue. They're not perfect, but they're so close it's not worth worrying about. Then there's the liftoff distance. This is how high the sensor tracks off the pad, so when you're lifting the mouse. I believe they're getting too low these days, under 1 DVD. I think just over 1 DVD is best. And lastly, I do a line test, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. It's pretty basic, but it's just to make sure there's no angle snapping, which means it doesn't smooth your movements to become straight lines, no jitter or skipping again, no crazy movement when you do lift the mouse off the pad, and no sensor or lens rattle, which can cause your aim to be thrown off when you flick. Again, very rare though, so don't worry about it too much. And that basically concludes the sensor testing, that I find important anyway. Again, my testing is about a lot of experience playing first-person shooters, and with the top opticals, I pretty much don't find a problem anymore. So I hope that helps. Use your links in the description if you want to help support the channel. Subscribe for more mouse reviews, like and share this video, and I'll catch you in the next.